June the 25th, 2019. Guys, you're looking at today's USGS earthquake map, and it's showing 654 quakes in the entire map area if we expand it all the way out. But here, if we look at China Lake in the Ridgecrest area, of those 461 of these, a lot of these would be considered aftershocks, but really they could be precursor and not post-cursor, if you understand what I'm saying. In other words, this has happened before. Now, this swarm is very unusual. Again, 461 today. This is all magnitudes. Now, that's from 0.1 up to the strongest that we've seen at 3.5. Most of this is all in the Ridgecrest and the China Lake Naval Air Station area. Now, I've got to give a shout out to Adam over at Marfugal News. He has some great guests on there, and him and I think his name is Dex that works with him there. They bring a lot of interesting research, and they bring a lot of interesting guests in. And again, shout out, Adam. Thanks for the reports. But you guys remember right after the July 4th quake for the Marfugal family, there was a lady caller into his show that night, maybe the 5th or 6th, I can't remember. And she said she was in the area. She had been there for many years, had experienced many different types of earthquakes. Most of the time, they were kind of a long, rolling thing. And she said, I'm thinking now, if I'm not mistaken, guys, that the 7.1 was one of those long, rolling quakes. But one of the 6.5s or something was more of like an explosion. Many of you here probably remember that. And I think someone else on the show that night, as I was listening, said the same thing. One of them was more like an explosion. Now, the China Lake Naval Air Warfare Zone that you see here, they do a lot of that. They have missiles that hit things on the ground that blow up, guys. They have missiles that penetrate the surface and blow stuff up. That's what it is, and it's a desert area. And the desert area has a lot to do with what I'm talking about in this video. But you can see where the quakes are, and remember, and these red lines, guys, are fault zones. And we had talked about this the other day. If you come down and look just south of the Ridgecrest and southwest of the Ridgecrest area, you have this fault that runs along this ridge line. Now, it's part of what they call the Garlock fault. It runs southwest into the San Andreas fault along the coast here. And you can see it's quite a large rift in the earth where this fault zone is. And when we look at it on the U.S. Geological maps, you'll see what I'm saying. But it runs down south of Bakersville into one of the most watched earthquake zones on the planet, San Andreas, that leads into the Cascadia subduction zone. Anyway, let's go back here to the area we're looking at. And a couple of nights ago, I caught just a brief part of one of Adam's shows, and they had a video of a guy that had sent it in, and it was he was talking about he had connections inside the USGS, and they were keeping it on the down low to keep public panic from happening about a possible volcanic eruption in this area. Now, again, if you look north of this area, you're basically desert. A lot of it was low-lying seas in the ancient times. And if you follow this fault line, it's called the Owens Valley Fault. I think this is Owens River, guys. And it comes up in here to a large series of faults called the unmanned faults in the volcanic tablelands. And you got Mammoth Mountain. Now, let's change maps. This is from the California Department of Conservation. It's the California Geological Survey map, and you can add layers. And here we are looking at Ridgecrest. This is the Naval Air Warfare Center at China Lake. And you've got the Coso Range, which is a volcanic mountain range. Guys, if you've been through the Valley of Fire in New Mexico and you see all those lava deposits, huge black rock flows, you've got that in that area. And this is what we're talking about. You can see how the deserts tried to kind of reclaim the area, but the black rock is very obvious. And it says the Coso Volcanic Field is located in Inyo County, California, at the western edge of the Basin and Range Geologic Province and northern region of the Mojave Desert. The fossil falls are part of the Coso Field, created by prehistoric Owens River. That's still in that valley, but they are within the Naval Air Weapons Station at China Lake and northeast of Little Lake and U.S. Route 395, right where we're talking about. So we are in a volcanic field range now. This was, it's supposed to be quiet, it's supposed to be ancient, but we know that that's been changing in the last few years, especially with gamma ray penetration, because our shields are weak. We're in grand solar minimum. You can also go back, guys, to not quite a year ago, August 16th, 2018. Very new information on the geological timeline. But this is going up north of that very Owens Valley, and it says 240 cubic miles of magma was just discovered beneath California's supervolcano. If you look at this map, it's called Long Valley Supervolcano, guys. And this yellow area goes down right here is that ancient Owens Valley, which was originally a seabed. If you look at the old maps. And it's desert, it's sandy, and it's non-consolidated rock. In other words, it's the path of least resistance. We will look at that a little closer. But you have here Long Valley Supervolcano, and let's just read a little about this. It says one of the largest supervolcanoes in the world sits underneath California, lying dormant for the past 100,000 years. Now researchers have gotten a clear glimpse into what lies below the Long Valley Supervolcano, uncovering 240 cubic miles of magma sitting beneath it. It is important to start off by saying this absolutely doesn't mean there is any imminent danger. Experts at the USGS are actively monitoring this supervolcano, and while there has been an uptick in activity over the past 4 decades, there are no signs of eruption. Says, while you have heard quite a bit about the supervolcano sitting beneath Yellowstone National Park, you may be unfamiliar with this other major supervolcano, the Long Valley Caldera. The Long Valley Caldera sits in eastern California adjacent to Mammoth Mountain and measures 20 miles long and 11 miles wide. Says Caldera is basically a depression formed after the eruption of magma to the surface. As magma fills up the magma chambers below the volcano, it expands the crust and the volcano grows. Guys, we saw that with Mount St. Helens. We saw suddenly, in 4 weeks, a giant dome grow on the side of it. It says after an eruption, there's a tremendous amount of volume that has suddenly been displaced, which causes the ground above to sink into a bowl-shaped depression, which is the caldera. This caldera is the depression formed from the supervolcano eruption 760,000 years ago, which ejected hot ash, lava, and toxic gas. The eruption 760,000 years ago erupted 140 cubic miles of material from the supervolcano. To put this into perspective, the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens erupted 0.29 cubic miles of material, not 140 cubic miles, but 0.29, meaning the Long Valley eruption ejected nearly 500 times that amount of material. If all of the 240 cubic miles of magma found beneath the Long Valley supervolcano were to erupt, it would eject over 800 times the volume of material at the 1980 St. Helens eruption. This is the reason geologists with the USGS continuously monitor the supervolcanoes that lie dormant beneath America. If and when one does erupt, it will trigger catastrophic destruction and loss of life. Fortunately, there's an extremely low likelihood of any supervolcano eruption occurring in any of our lifetimes. These eruptions happen very infrequently, but when they do happen, the world notices. It says scientists began noting that the Long Valley caldera began growing around 1978, which again is a millisecond in geological time. It says, and it has been doing so ever since. That is very recent. This gradual growing likely represents the influx of magma into the magma chamber below the supervolcano, essentially filling the tank in preparation for the next eruption. While the supervolcano has been studied for decades, it has been difficult to determine the amount of magma that lies beneath Long Valley. A recent study published in the journal Geology lays out new data and an understanding of the magma reservoir. Guys, again, less than a year old. And they're showing this area, and this is in the Mammoth Mountain area, in this hot zone, and which is probably about 25 kilometers, because you can see a 50-kilometer section here, is, again, 240 cubic miles of lava beneath there, and it goes down the Owens Valley into China Lake area. Again, China Lake has its own volcanic activity called the Kuso Fields. But if you look back 760,000 years ago, this could have all very easily been connected. Now, going back to this Department of Conservation map, again, you have the Ridgecrest area here, going up the Owens Valley to the Mammoth Mountain area where this underground volcano is. And I'm going to change the transparency on the map and bring in the geologic information, guys. And just bear with me here, you'll see it change. Again, this is the Ridgecrest area, Naval Air Station, up the Owens Valley. Again, desert area, sandy, not well, it's not real hardened rock. On all sides you have volcanic granite. You've got a lot of hard surface. So any travel of this type activity would be the path of least resistance. Whether these ever connect or not, the same thing is happening down here. So let me pull this up and kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at. Again, Ridgecrest is right here. This entire area is part of China Lake. Now, if we pull in the actual information on the rock structure, it'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. And everything's coded in this light tan area. It says Q. That is alluvium, lake, playa, and terrace deposits, unconsolidated and semi-consolidated. It's very loose. It's the path of least resistance, not only for earthquakes and tremors, but for volcanic or lava flow. Then if you look around it in the GRMZ areas, which you can pull this down, you will see that that is very hard rock. Mesozoic to Precambrian granite and metamorphic rocks, mostly gneiss and other metamorphic rocks injected by granite rock. Very hard. So this is where you're seeing most of the quakes. And if you were having pre-eruption quakes, small ones like we're seeing, then of course it would be, this is the path of least resistance. Now I want to go back to the earthquake map from today for a moment. And also, if you remember, there are aerial photographs of these large cracks that have opened up down in this area. You can see them. They're coming up to the surface. But the strongest one to date, look at, it's 1.4 kilometers, guys. That's about as shallow as you can get without having a surface eruption. I mean, think about it, from 9.5 kilometers along Ridgecrest, 6.3, 1.1 in the Searles Valley area, which is all of this. So to me, instead, what we're, again, it goes back to July the 4th. One quake, the largest one, was a normal quake, the long rolling one, but one of them was an explosion. Was it a man-made explosion, as some say? Who knows? Was it something ripping open? Was it a what we call a geothermal explosion, when water heats up to the steam point and it blows the top off of something? I don't know that, guys, but I'm just trying to put some of the science into what we're seeing. And again, going back to Adam's videos, there could be a lot more to it than what we're being told. Another thing, guys, is that it was mentioned that $100 million almost overnight was sent to restore, rebuild, and upgrade this China Lake base. $100 million. You never saw it on the news. Just allocated immediately, bipartisan, and sent here. So again, guys, is this some type of underground magma movement that we're seeing causing this continuous swarm of quakes in the area? I'm not sure, guys, just looking at it from what information we have. Now, quickly, guys, I want to give a shout out to all the Alexa Pure water filter owners and the Berkey water filter owners. You notice you have in the bottom of your tanks enough holes pre-drilled to put 4 of these filters in. And there's stoppers there in case you don't. But we invented something a few years ago, and I mentioned it. We still make it right here in our shop. It's U.S. made, assembled here, and made here. It's called the AquaFlow Max. I don't want to go into a long, detailed commercial here, guys. I just think it's the best thing that's ever happened to any of these tight water filters. It's $19.95. It fits into the pre-drilled holes that are in your unit. No modifications. There's thousands of people that have used it now, and they all like it. I love mine. But, guys, it helps support our channel, and we're bringing you something you can use. It's not gold and silver. This is a life-saving technology, food, water filtration. We appreciate it, guys. It's a heads up. Be safe.